Hi everyone and welcome to our next episode of FSG Financial TV. This week we're going to be continuing our series on the retiree. Brice and Ronnie join us and they're going to be going over finding the balance between leaving a legacy for your children and your grandchildren and making sure that you enjoy your own retirement. Make sure to stay tuned till the end and you'll have a chance to win some FSG gear.
Hey guys, Brice and Ronnie with FSG Financial TV here. Today we are talking about how you can ensure a legacy for your children and grandchildren and how you can ensure that you're enjoying your retirement, which I think is a complicated topic because a lot of people struggle finding that balance.
Absolutely. I think we were talking earlier about, really recognizing first and foremost whether legacy is something that you're interested in.
Well, and I think a lot of people have the mindset that I worked for my whole life and now I want to really enjoy my retirement, and if there's anything left over, great. Catch-22 of that is a lot of people put legacy as a very, very high priority, and there's no right or wrong answer to that question. It's what's your priority.
Absolutely.
So let's set that. Let's set that first, and I think that leads to an interesting conversation on all right, if we have a priority, how do we ensure that we're taking the right steps for that? Right?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it is balance, right? I mean, I think a lot of it is most people that enter in retirement have kind of this fear, do I have enough? Right? And these are things that we talk about throughout the series.
There's a lot of polls out there showing that that's the number one fear of retirees is, do I have enough? And so if the fear of outliving your money is one of the first priorities, I think we got to address that first before you even address the legacy issue.
Absolutely.
Right? Kyle Cooper and I talked a couple weeks ago in the FSG episode on making sure you don't outlive your money, right? So let's check that box off. Okay, now legacy is optional, but do we want it to be a priority?
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, and I think a lot of that is carved out in having somebody who's sitting down with you and coming up with a plan. Right. And so, if we find through that plan that that's an option and we can maximize your enjoyment in retirement and the things that you want to do and create that comfort, then I think it leads into, so how do I pass this money on to my loved ones, right? And I think one of the big ways that we try to do that with our clients in education, right, is, first and foremost, tax efficiencies, right? Absolutely. Taking a look at what assets that you have, recognizing whether it's, IRAs, 401ks, pre-tax accounts, after-tax accounts, if we have some Roth accounts that have some tax-free growth inside of it, and spending that time to figure out where is the best places for me to take this money and spend, and where is the best place for me to leave it maybe for the heirs.
So you're saying that if making sure that you're enjoying your retirement, step one to enjoying your retirement is making sure it's tax efficient.
Absolutely.
Right? Because if you're pulling out of a 401k or an IRA, depending on your tax bracket, 15% as high as, I think the new federal highest bracket is 37%, plus you have state taxes depending on where you're at, is going to Uncle Sam before you spend.
Absolutely.
Right? So if we can minimize the amount of taxes, that helps maximize your retirement enjoyment.
Absolutely.
Not to mention, if we can minimize taxes, that can potentially minimize things like your Medicare supplement bill,
Absolutely.
right? Because some of that's calculated based on income. I would say, above and beyond taxes is making sure that your retirement lifestyle is set up to be low maintenance, right? So maybe you have that house that you raise your kids in with a big yard and the 4 bedrooms or whatever it may be. And once you're retired, that might just be too much to where you're spending more time working on that house than doing the things that you want to do.
Absolutely.
Right? So, maybe downsizing is the next step.
Yep. And I think a lot of it, too, is identifying the objective, right? Everybody has families, and the more we're involved in finance, the more we realize how much emotion and psychology goes into what we do, right? And being mindful of that and spending time with our clients to understand what really is the objective, right? Everybody has different family members. Everybody has, different ages and different lifestyles, right? So one of the things we talked about, right, was looking at your income situation versus the beneficiaries, right? And recognizing, again, that it may make some sense for you to maybe take some of that taxable income because you're paying a lesser tax bracket than the heirs, right? I think it really boils down to someone will be the beneficiary. Right? And what we try to do is help our clients engage in making the people they care about, or whether it's a non-for-profit or something of that nature, that the money goes to the people that they want it to, as opposed to the IRS.
All right, it's that time again. We're going to go over our FSG trivia question of the week. This week's question is, what is the number one hobby enjoyed by retirees? Is it A, volunteering, B, travel, C, music, theater, and dance, or D, golf? I know golf was the favorite for all of our advisors here, but stay tuned and find the real answer.
I mean, to the legacy side of things is you got to have a plan. You got to have an estate plan, right? I mean, it's something. It's unbelievably. Your father has done estate plans for 30 years, and it's unbelievably easy to procrastinate on an estate plan.
Absolutely.
Right? Because you have to sit there and contemplate your own mortality, which is just a lot of fun, right?
Absolutely.
So having a plan is the first thing there. So let's say we have enough money to enjoy our retirement. Maximizing your legacy is I think a different conversation than just having a legacy.
Absolutely.
You referenced who's beneficiary and what type of accounts.
Yep.
So let's give an example of that, right?
Yeah.
So
I'll just start out because that's a great point. I'll just start out by saying, there's a very large percentage of beneficiary designations on accounts that are incorrect. Right.
You're not kidding.
You talk about, taking that as a step further, you talk about pre-tax accounts, right?
Yep.
One of the things that we stress is
a pre-tax account being an IRA or 401k, something that you deferred money into, and when you pull it out, there's taxes.
Absolutely.
It's pre-tax.
Yep, absolutely. And one of the things we talk about with our clients is recognizing the benefit of having a spouse, right? That the spouse has the ability to take over that account as if it was always theirs and continue to defer the tax. So the real question in legacy planning is, now it's a non-spouse receiving that money, right? And you mentioned trusts. The idea of estate planning, right, post your passing, how those monies get transferred, who's involved, the expenses, all those things is really important in making sure that those monies go as efficient as possible to somebody who may not be a spouse.
So an example might be, if you have something that's pre-tax and you're passionate about charities, you want to leave that, if you're going to leave something to charity, leave the pre-tax assets.
Absolutely.
Because the charity, guess what, has a tax bracket of 0.
Absolutely.
Right? And if you have something that's post-tax, meaning taxes have already been paid on it, whether that's a Roth IRA or life insurance or whatever that may be, leave that to your heirs.
Absolutely.
Don't leave that to a nonprofit, right?
Absolutely.
You absolutely want to leave your pre-tax assets to a nonprofit. So if there's one specific tip we can give on a legacy, it's make sure your beneficiaries are right. And if you don't know, ask a professional, ask a financial advisor, ask your CPA, ask somebody that specializes in that.
Absolutely.
Okay, our trivia question for this week was, what is the number one hobby enjoyed by retirees? A, volunteering, B, travel, C, music, theater, dance, or D, golf? Well, this one is no surprise. It's definitely B, traveling. Make sure you stay tuned to the end of the episode to win some free FSG gear.
Well, I think when we look at that, we said, number one, recognize the objective, right? Number two, be tax efficient. So we give a specific example about beneficiary designations and making sure that if you have a charitable inclination that you're doing that properly with pre-tax dollars, because that's going to benefit both you and the charity. In addition to that, we talked about good foundational mechanisms like estate planning, a trust or a will, and making sure that you understand the difference and what to expect from that, right? And then I think the third piece really is kind of facilitating down into, what are some specific things if legacy is an objective, right? So one of the things that, as an example of many that we talk about, is life insurance. Right? Life insurance is a specific example that really can do several things. The first, I think, when we talk about grandkids or younger inheritors, oftentimes with our clients is, that creates this really nice legacy. As a third-party story, I'm a type 1 diabetic, was diagnosed at 27. And, I remember the difficult conversations that I was having with my wife, who we now have children, about my inability to get insurance. So if I had a grandparent who was looking out for a legacy plan, that was something that they could have done for me, right? Guarantee my insurability, so that way I don't have to worry about, not getting insurance or not being able to protect my family.
Right.
So just a specific example that we can.
And so that's an example where you're buying something for the next generation,
Absolutely.
Right? But life insurance can also be used. It's primarily thought of as something. It's like leasing a pile of money, right? So I'm young, and I may not have a big enough pile of money to support my wife if I die, right?
Absolutely.
So I buy a life insurance policy, and I'm essentially paying a lease, renting a pile of money in case I die, right? And then you don't need that later in life. unless you wanted to provide that legacy, perhaps, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think one of the biggest things that life insurance provides, and we talk about tax efficiency all the time, is it is one of the most efficient assets for wealth transfer tax-wise.
Sure.
Right? Because what's the tax bracket on life insurance?
Absolutely.
It's zero. You don't
Absolutely.
pay tax on life insurance death benefits. So I think, kind of to start wrapping things up here is the first thing you have to have if you're having this conversation about legacy versus lifestyle, which is, an easy conversation to have, but maybe a harder one to get to the bottom of, is prioritize. What's the first priority, right? Let's make sure that we have enough, and then let's work from there, right? And if you're going to be trying to ensure your own enjoyment in retirement, some things you can do, maybe minimize the house, keep maintenance low, make sure that your portfolio is tax efficient so you have a little extra spending money. And then the aspect of providing a legacy, you provided a couple great tips there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think, in all of what we had said, I think the reality is, first and foremost, it's about being educated, right? It's about sitting with people that will spend the time necessary to understand your situation and tailor a good plan and really educate and empower you to understand what all your options are, right?
Absolutely.
So, I think we our hope here is that we've given you some good ideas on thought processes to be thinking about, how do I plan for a legacy if that's an objective of yours. Again, this is Brice Carter and Ronnie Thompson. We appreciate the time, and take a look at the article that Brice will be producing for more details on the subject.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Have a great week.
Well, everyone, that concludes this week's episode of FSG Financial TV. I hope you enjoyed the conversation about striking a balance between leaving a legacy for your children and your grandchildren, but also enjoying yourself. Make sure to email us your favorite takeaway from this episode at contact@fsgmichigan.net, or give us a call to schedule at 800-804-0420. If you email us your favorite takeaway, you will be entered into a drawing to win some FSG gear. Don't miss out.